So, in my personal opinion, Scream 1 and even Scary Movie 1 reinvented the whole comedy horror scene and formula for the films in those genres, for just comedy horror in general. And I do really enjoy the entire Scream franchise. Scream 1, 2, 3, 4, and now we get a fifth one. And I really enjoyed how after the first Scream, they didn't just do meta jokes pertaining to their own films and story, but they also implemented the meta jokes within films within the films. And I do really enjoy that because it's kind of like you're watching the Scream films and they are literally making movies in the movies, making fun of themselves. They never take themselves seriously. That's one thing I do commend every writer for the Scream series for. They are never taking themselves seriously. They take themselves seriously to an extent, but it's never like Christopher Nolan type of serious. It's kind of like if Quentin Tarantino made horror films. I feel like the Scream films would kind of be how he would write them, although a lot better. Because that's one of the biggest problems with the Scream franchise after the first one. Scream 1 is written and made excellently. Like I said, that movie alone reinvented the whole horror genre. In, I believe it was 99 that was made. And Wes Craven is a god for that. He made A Nightmare on Elm Street and he even one-upped himself with Scream. I personally believe Scream as a whole, at the very least the first one, is better than anything Wes Craven has ever put out. And especially by the end of his career and before a couple years before he passed away, he made kind of some garbage films like My Soul to Take, which I enjoyed that film, but objectively is a piece of crap. Scream 1 was excellent. It was brilliant. Scream 2, which then also starred Timothy Olyphant as an add-on, which he's one of my all-time favorite actors because of Justified. Scream 2 is excellent, albeit not really on par as the first one. I'd say Scream 1 is a 10 out of 10. Scream 2 is an extremely solid 9 out of 10. Scream 3 had some quippy, funny dialogue, but it was kind of garbage. Scream 4 was also mostly excellent. Scream 3 I would have given like a 6 or a 7. Scream 4 tried to reinvent the franchise in the same patterns but with new age technology, and that's what I really appreciated from Scream 4. Scream 4, way back then, a decade ago at this point, I gave an 8 out of 10. I haven't rewatched it in a couple years, but from what I remember, is a solid film, nowhere near as great as the first or second Screams. Now we get Scream 5, which is basically the formula of Scream 4 mixed into a meta story of Scream 1, and I'll get the good shit out of the way so that this seems like a very positive review. All of the original things and the meta things in Scream 5 mostly work. There are a lot of scenes and a lot of dialogue that work exceptionally well. They are really the scenes that have a lot of the meta in it, but they're not excessively done. Like some scenes that are written with a lot of meta in them actually make sense to the story and to the film itself. And I really appreciated that they kept it as a full circle like they always do, but they always add on new spins and twists in every single Scream installment. And I did appreciate that they did stick to the Scream 1 formula to a fault. Now, with that being said, the very bad and quite ugly things about Scream 5, not so much the pre-existing characters, it's all of the new characters, and it's also some of the plotting. So some of the new characters are done justice. So some of the new characters actually blend in their storylines with the pre-existing characters. And then we get the other characters, which are secondary and tertiary characters, who are the friends and, friends slash killers, and you try to pick out and find out who it is, and then they give it to you at the very end. And they literally have jokes about Act 1, 2, 3, exactly like the first Scream. And that's not saying that that's bad, because sometimes they do that well in Scream 5. But my biggest issue with this is that they focused a lot on the main characters and the villains and the pre-existing characters. They actually continued the pre-existing characters' storylines probably even more than the new characters. I would say at the very most, half of the new characters were actually done justice. The other new characters were they weren't stereotyped. And this isn't a woke film by any means. They actually had a couple anti-woke jokes in this film that I appreciated. My problem is that this was an hour and about 45 minutes of a film that should have been, I would say this should have been the first 2.5 hour Scream film, in that a lot of the murders, at least half of them, I did not care about them. I didn't like how they were paced. I didn't like who they were killing. I didn't like what they did, how they set it up. There were a lot of times where the characters would make smart decisions and they would have smart metas in them, and then they would just pull a 180 and do exactly what they were joking about, and they would do that and then get killed. Maybe in the first Scream that worked, but then you do it 5 times after that, it doesn't work. It didn't even work after the second time. So Scream 5, that's where I stand. I have a problem with the unbalanced writing and pacing, because you just don't care. You like the pre-existing and some of the new characters, but then they also settle for just hack and slash horror every now and again. And that's what I really, really hated about Scream 5. Not only did they settle, but they settled so cheaply, where not only was I already aggravated with stupid character decisions, in which they pulled a 180 from being smart about not getting killed, but also they set up their kills in the most asinine, cliche ways ever. Not all of them, but a lot of them. I would say at least half of the kills, cliche, very expected, like 3 minutes before they happen. Even the intro is kind of a mixed bag for me. The intro is fun and it's entertaining and it has some spins to it, but it's made and plotted the exact same as every single other one. And like I said, with some twist to it. Whereas Scream 4, they had a twist within a twist. And then I think it was like another meta twist inside of that. And then they got the movie going. In Scream 5, the intro at the very least was literally a rehash with new age technology, even more new age than Scream 4's new age technology plotting. Now the villains, meshing those storylines with the full circle part of it, I did appreciate that, because as a spoiler, so just forewarn, I did appreciate that there was kind of a meta into the storyline with the whole full circle where they were at the very end and who it was, how they were acting. That felt justified, but nowhere near, absolutely nowhere near the acting as Shaggy, who was Stu, and I don't know the actor's name, but who played Billy Loomis. In all of the Scream films, we only had 2 exceptional standout villains that actually acted and portrayed their characters. phenomenally, and that was the characters and the actors of Billy Loomis and Stu being Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. And in Scream 5, they try to implement those tactics and those kind of carryovers into these characters for the new age. And I'm not saying they acted poorly, they didn't. But I don't think anybody will ever be able to present their villainy or tyranny like that as Billy and Stu. And even in Scary Movie 1 at the end, I mean, it was all played with just hilarity all around, but even their acting, I would say at the very end of Scary Movie 1, even the villains acting at the end is better than most of what we get from Scream. And like I said, Scream 1, Billy and Stu, they acted phenomenally. Everybody else after that, nobody has ever really put in a terrible performance per se in the Scream films. They've just never really lived up to Billy and Stu's performances, at least as the villains. So overall, Scream 5 for me is a mixed bag. Really, really high highs, like I mean 9, 10 out of 10 territory for a lot of scenes. Some excellently crafted writing, like some smart decisions, but we get really low lows in that they just pull a 180. Like, for example, there's a scene where they're doing all these metas, you should and shouldn't do this, and they make probably the funniest joke of Scream 5 is not wanting to have sex with a girlfriend. Because, and I quote, "I don't think it's smart to be alone, so let's not go upstairs to have sex." And I just busted out laughing. I'm like, that's how you make a film. But then 5 minutes later, the same character, keep in mind, the same character who said, "Let's not be alone," decided to stumble out and try to find his girlfriend. And then we all know what happens then. That's the problem I have with Scream 5. It can be really smart, and then they pull a 180, and they're really stupid. Borderline retarded. So overall for me, Scream 5 is just disjointed and very uneven. At the very least in its writing. In its pacing, it's kind of bad as well. It feels rushed, but it's the writing that I have a problem with because it can be great, but then it's also shit. So Scream 5 for me is a 6 out of 10. Thank you.